Thank you for joining the Northern Miner here at the annual PDAC convention in Toronto. Canada's federal government has signaled its intention this week to put in place an extension of the mineral exploration tax credit, while the United States overnight announced blanket tariffs on Canadian goods. Here to tell us a little bit more and unpack the issues is the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada's president, Raymond Goldie. Thanks for making time to join me.
Good morning, Henry.
All right. So let's start with the METC announcement of Sunday. The government has announced its intention, but Parliament is currently prorogued. So there's a bit of a mismatch. How do you see this METC actually being implemented if there's no legislative way to do that?
Well, PDAC isn't versed enough in some of the ways of government and the CRA in determining answers to your question. You phrased it correctly in saying the government has signaled its intention. But because it's prorogued, it's not the government has said it will. And so our job at PDAC is that we want people to go to a booth 3300, and sign a petition to the government. And the petition to the government says, let's not do this every year, worry about renewal or not of the METC. Let's make it a permanent part of the landscape. So we're encouraging people to go and sign up and endorse that view. Okay. And meanwhile, there are many other things that that do need change, and we look forward to. In particular, the rule that says that if you acquire flow-through shares and you pay capital gains on selling those shares, the government charges you as if you had paid zero for those shares, not the true acquisition cost. That's not fair. And if you look at a project, when that project is handed by the geologists over to the engineers, suddenly the tax treatment of the expenses change. And that's also not fair.
So really, where is this going to? It all adds up to additional costs for explorers. Am I right?
Additional costs and uncertainty. Mm-hmm. Will this program be around or not for me to raise money? So you're right. That's another very good reason for making this a permanent feature.
It seems like a perennial issue when PDAC is on. We're always kind of looking, is the METC going to get extended? Why do you think government is loath to make it a permanent solution?
I do not know the answer.
But you're certainly campaigning for that.
Certainly are, and so many other tax rules that once they're passed, they're not renewed every year. They become a permanent part of the landscape, and we would like the METC to be a permanent part of the landscape.
Mm-hmm. So the METC could play an important part in incentivizing exploration.
Yes.
What else can be done to incentivize further investment in the important exploration sector?
Well, there was those changes that I mentioned, change in the capital treatment of capital gains, right. And the alternative minimum tax is another issue, and being able to have the work by engineers after the initial resources being determined at a project, have that count as exploration expenditures as well as the work that the geologists do.
I want to pick your brain as well about the tariffs that's been announced. How do you see that read through into and affecting your constituents?
That is such a good question, and I heard it asked a couple of days ago of the CEO of he was the chairman of a major mining company, and the questioner said, "Can you tell us the effect of tariffs on your company, or would you rather say that it's really not well determined and depending on what side of the bed that you get up on the next day, it might change. It might change tomorrow. So it's too early to say." And the chairman's answer was, yes.
Okay, so a lot of uncertainty.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the PDAC's own approach is that we're advocating stable, responsible Canadian production, building of Canadian supply chains instead of using minerals as a lever in the trade war.
Right. Okay. So perhaps beyond the METC tax credit and the tariffs, what other lobbying files are on your desk? What are the other things that the PDAC is pushing change for?
Typically, we think of three areas, and that's access to capital, which we've talked about a bit, and that really is a very concerning situation because we just determined that towards the end of last year, the average working capital of a TSX Venture Exchange listed company, their average working capital is negative. Clearly, most mining companies, most exploration companies are finding it very difficult to raise funds. So that's one issue, access to capital. The second one is access to lands. Say if we were to find a big new copper porphyry deposit in Canada tomorrow, and we start going through the permitting process and financing process, that mine would come on, if past history is any guide, that mine won't come on until 2050. And to be part of the great electric transition, that's too late. So access to land, shortening the permitting procedure is a big part of that access to land. And so that's access to capital, access to land, access to people. And the big issue is that there's not enough people going into the minerals business from university to fill the gap as people retire or step down.
Yeah. What kind of initiatives is the PDAC implementing to help with that skills gap issue?
We have a program, the Student and Early Career Program, in which we encourage. We have a program, for example, called mentorship, where you can choose a mentor and go and ask them, how can I get into the minerals industry? And with my set of skills, what could I do? And we have what we call SIMU, the Student Industry Mineral Workshop, which we have in Sudbury every year. And you learn things there that you don't learn at school, and you get enthusiastic. And one of the things we just started was going to high school career fairs. And we found that in particular high school students had little interest in going to the minerals industry. But when you say, how would you like to drive a scoop tram underground, put on this virtual reality headset and you can drive a scoop tram, suddenly they're interested.
Interesting. Those are the kind of initiatives we need to get people to whet the appetite, right? All right, so we're now in the third day of the PDAC convention. How would you describe the mood on the exhibition floors?
Well, with the price of gold back touching record highs, there's a lot of positivity about that. But that's tempered by the inability, despite this environment, the inability for many companies to raise funds. And so I think that's probably the best way, tempered enthusiasm.
So you've mentioned access to capital as being a particularly critical issue for the industry, but I do want to ask, don't you think it's part of the natural cycle of a free market? Isn't there an expected culling of those juniors that are still continuing to raise money but really not delivering value? Don't you think that's a good thing?
There's certainly good things about it because not only is there culling, there's also selection, and so some of the major companies have joint ventures with those, and so at least there's an expert, a geologist working for the major companies, looking at some of the projects and saying, hey, we would like to finance this one and this one. So that is a big company interest in financing juniors is an important part of that.
Okay. Raymond, is there perhaps anything else important that we should discuss that I've not specifically asked you about?
It'll be the access to people not only includes the issue of not enough young people are coming into the minerals industry. There's also the encouragement for Indigenous participation in the industry, and we have a new program bringing Indigenous youth. We call it the Indigenous Ambassador Program. We bring them to the PDAC. It's the first time this year. We'll see whether those ambassadors take back to their communities what they've learned about the minerals industry here at PDAC.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for making time to join me today. That was the PDAC President, Raymond Goldie.
Thank you, Henry.